Welcome back to In Plain Sight. This series is for operations and safety leaders who want practical deployment guidance, not product theatre. So no demos, no hype, just what works in real sites with real constraints. I'm Jeremy, part of the go-to-market team here at Viso, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be your host. This is a masterclass series for operations and industrial leaders who want to embrace the opportunities that new technologies can bring. We'll give you practical and actionable advice and clarity on what works in real operations. And we want to show you how you can be effective when implementing and scaling computer vision, how you can make it successful in your organization. As ever, we'll share an insight that frames a specific challenge, one misconception related to that, and then a dive into how you can ensure you can make this work in practice with examples and tips. And we close out, as always, with a key takeaway. So in today's webinar, we're covering the field guide, practical tools for deploying computer vision at scale. It's about, as it would suggest, the practical aspects of scaling AI vision. And joining me is the wonderful Sasha. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great to be here.
So a quick intro, Sasha is one of our expert solution engineers, which means she works directly with operations, IT, and safety teams to design deployments, solving real-world constraints in the field, and making sure those implementations stick after go live. One more thing before we jump in, please do feel free to submit your questions. We will do our best to get to them all today. Our friendly producer's keeping an eye on them, and we'll feed them in when the timing's right. So keep them coming. If we don't manage to get to them today, then we'll most definitely follow up after the webinar. Okay, over to you, Sasha. I've heard you consistently say that there are two things that matter in the real world: rolling out to more cameras and more sites, and then layering on additional use cases without restarting from scratch each time. In your own words, though, what are you hoping to make clear for people today?
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, simply put, we're going to make sure that everyone's scalability becomes predictable. Most teams find it fairly easy to get that first use case under their belt. They have the right support, they have all the expertise around them. But scaling can stall because stakeholder alignment breaks when it's mostly meant to be just about operational rollout. What's often overlooked part is the stakeholder coordination and then response workflows that people actually want to use. I'd like to break down what implementation really means, what really happens when reality challenges the plan, and how to build rollout momentum and get faster with every new camera, site, and use case.
Such a great way to start. Thank you. So those of you that have joined before will know the format. For those joining for the first time, we like to start with one key insight. So Sasha, what's the most important thing a safety or ops leader should be mindful of before they start to scale?
That's a great question. I think start small to prove value, but also choose a path that sets you for success from the start. So what you don't want to have is go with a technology that allows you to successfully deploy that one use case. What we're looking for is to find a technology, find partners in the business that can really support you throughout. So although you might start with that health and safety use case, which is key to your organization, ideally, you would want to partner up with someone who can then flex and grow with your organization. So really, you're looking for someone who can then stretch into operational use cases, quality use case. You don't want to implement computer vision solution and then a couple of months turn around and find out that there's requirement for something bigger and find out that that solution doesn't work. So definitely align with the capabilities that you may want from a solution throughout your company first, and then go live with a solution that aligns with it.
Excellent. So you really do need flexibility in a number of directions, as you said. So without putting words into your mouth, there's scaling the same use case within a site. There's also replicating across sites, so different layouts, lighting. And then there's that expanding the portfolio piece. So adding those new use cases across safety, operations, quality, and efficiency without rebuilding your foundation.
I think that's really well put. Thanks, Jeremy.
Well, just riffing off of you, Sasha, so thank you. I've often heard you talk about the trap that some people can fall into, particularly when deploying for just one specific use case. What is that trap, the bit that people don't notice until later on?
Often you hear in today's world, if you're not flexible, you become irrelevant really quickly. And that comes to employees, employers, that comes to businesses, organizations. It doesn't matter where you're in. If you've been in that industry, in that business for decades, you have to learn to flex now because the world is just changing so rapidly. And I think that's any solution that you're going with, that's what you will be looking for. I understand that the world of AI and computer vision is so brand new to everyone. So everyone's looking for, what's the quickest plug and play? But do you really want to be replacing that solution in a couple of months' time because it doesn't meet all of your requirements? So, what you're really looking for is someone who can be flexible with you. AI models are changing fast. Whatever you deploy today may become irrelevant tomorrow. So you really don't want to go with a solution where, in a couple of months, maybe in a year, the information you're getting from it is not as good as what your competitors are getting. So I would definitely recommend going with a solution where replacing a model, adding a camera, going to a new site, adding a new use case doesn't mean redeploying the whole solution and, reconstructing from scratch.
I see. That's very clear. Thank you. Um, so would you say that the insight is perhaps prove value fast, but build it as a process? So something that's repeatable and iterative and can keep improving using the same solution. I mean, what I'm thinking is almost like a template or a blueprint so you can keep optimizing as you go forward.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's where your first small use case, your small deployment really comes in handy. This is where you can really set up the standards for cameras, governance, alert workflows, reporting. And this template is what really makes you successful, makes it go into the next site or that next use case so much simpler and faster.
Fantastic. Great way to kick off, Sasha. Thank you. So, moving on then, what would you say people assume about computer vision deployments that causes them the most pain?
That's a great question. I think it's, people are normally used to deployments either being software or hardware. But the reality with computer vision, it's both. Plus, you're adding live workflows on top of that. So, vision deployment will touch teams who may not normally collaborate and work together. So if you don't map those stakeholders early and get them on the same page, the project may stall. And the reasons have nothing to do with AI. So what I would say is keep the list of stakeholders who need to get involved. And it starts with the obvious. So your operations and safety, these are the ones who will define the outcomes, priorities, what actionable means. You must have the support of IT. They will naturally look into the networking, access controls, device management. You have facilities. So they will be there on site, boots on the ground, installing cameras, any physical devices. They're really key to making a successful project. Then you have your IT sec. So making sure that your data is kept safe, that you're not breaching any internal or government guidelines, that you're really keeping your people and, to be fair, your IP protected. And then following from that, you'll have legal and comms. So really making sure that there's that internal trust within the organization. This is not a surveillance technology. This is something that helps keep the people in your organization safe. And lastly, never to forget about procurement. Procurement will always set out the rules of who a successful vendor for the organization is. So it's definitely important to involve them as well. But if those roles aren't clear, You might get delays, inconsistent decisions, and quiet resistance because people feel surprised by what you're proposing to deploy.
Super comprehensive and clear. Thank you. I'm so glad that it's you answering the questions and not me, because you really know your stuff. Um, but if you had to name the two assumptions behind trickier rollouts, what might they be?
I think deciding not to define the governance straight away. So, governance is what makes the program safe, adoptable, scalable. You need to be clear on how each alert is handled, how they're prioritized, where they get sent to. Then there's the data piece. Who's benefiting from the data that gets collected? What story do we want the data to tell? We don't want it to be just, another chart or table that no one uses. So without the clarity over these pieces, the adoption will really drop. And the second is and it really leads on from the first, is we'll figure out the responses once alerts start coming in. So that's how you end up with alert fatigue. That's how you end up people with getting confused what each alert means and how to respond to it. So what you're really after is involving the workers on the ground, at the same time as deployment. You don't want someone to be surprised by a light shining at them because they don't know why. It could be because they're not wearing the right PPE. It could be because they're in danger and there's a forklift too close. So you really need to make sure that the alerts are clear for everyone who's going to be faced with them. And you need to know what the escalation of alerts is when the situation's getting more dangerous, what's going to happen then. It's really figuring out what alert responses are, what governance is, who's looking after which pieces, and who's benefiting from the solution overall.
Brilliant. So from alerts to the feedback loop, and then you touched on governance at the end there. Can we dive into that a little bit? In practice, what would you say is the minimum viable governance that actually works in deployments?
I don't think it has to be anything complex with a 300-page document. It can really be very lightweight. So I would say, firstly, who reviews the alerts and when? Secondly, escalation rules. What triggers intervention or is used just as information or is saved for training purposes later? Access control, who can access incidents, the data, metadata. So, for example, can a location elsewhere in the company look at the dashboards that are produced, let's say, from site A? Can the managers of site B have a look at that same data to compare? Or are they meant to be kept completely separate? All of that is important. And that also feeds into audit cadence. You must know who's looking at the data and when and what they're doing with it. And then change controls. When you have change within your organization, within a specific site, within a specific use case, who can define those new thresholds, rules, and who really sets that piece up. So the goal really is predictability. You really want to have those processes in place to start with, so you're not having to pedal forward and try to catch up later. Once you have those pieces, scaling just becomes more of a repeatable process.
Got it. Right. Our producer is waving at me, flagging up a question that I think comes up quite a lot. Just bear with me. Interesting. Let's dive in. So, who should own this internally? Safety or operations?
I think we might have just briefly touched upon that. It has to be both. Safety can drive the initial use case and bring the project to the table. But when it comes to scaling, rolling out, and even deploying on sites, it's operations that will need to be deeply involved because that comes with communicating with the workers on the floor. It comes with, staffing, and deployments, it all is really involved. And as much as safety may want to own the full piece, I think it's just so incredibly involved. You need to have that multi-discipline team on top of it.
Brilliant. Okay. So the first question's out the way. Let's get real world. When the field meets the plan, what actually happens at that point?
Well, what happens is that you learn quickly that you're not just buying a box and plugging it in. You're deploying into live and changing environment. So there'll be changes in PPE, there'll be workers on the floor. It really is a process that can be full of friction. And that's why experience and repeatability matters. So you are certainly an expert in your own field. However, you need to find a partner who has done this before, who's experienced in this, because there will be dozens of small variables that you just can't predict unless you've been in this situation before. So definitely find someone who's willing to partner with you fully.
That's great. And touching on those small variables that you're talking about, can you take us through the initial roadmap in your usual plain, jargon-free operational language?
I would say that it's all about sequencing. Baseline and foundations first, and then configuration, and then adoption and tuning. We typically look at a 6-week time frame, and that's from very start to finish. My slide is up, and actually, I would take week 1 and 2 as step 1, because what happens here is you have your kickoff, and that's where you figure out uh, what hardware you have, what's missing, what still needs to be set up. And in week 2, that's when you make sure that you're putting in those missing pieces into place. So then you have your week 3 and 4. So that's step 2. This is where Vise takes over from you in our case, or possibly your other partner would. This is where they take over from you and actually build that application. This is where your model building comes in. This is, and before that, even data collection, your logic layer. So going back to, when this happens, this alert should happen. When a situation becomes even more dangerous, we escalate it. So that's where the logic comes in and the building of those data models. So what happens to that data, who benefits from it, who works with it. And then you have the last 2 steps, which is both handing the reins over to the customer. So now the system is fully deploying, but you're not going live with full live alerts yet. What you're doing is you're tuning your implementation first to make sure that no one gets alert fatigue, that the thresholds and boundaries are within reason as required by you. And then from week 6, everything's tuned, everything's ready to go. We switch on live alerts. We're still there to step in and help out as needed. But really, at that point, you're on your own with your brand new working solution.
That's quite a journey to go through. Amazing that it happens so quick. Where do teams underestimate the real work and the heavy lifting?
I suppose there are 2 areas. So one, which I will come back to, and that's figuring out which alerts are actionable. But I'll talk to that in a minute, because I think one other piece that sometimes gets underestimated is, again, to do with that stakeholder alignment. You really want to start your journey with everyone in the loop. And the people who often get left out is facilities. The reason I bring this up is because that hardware installation, that alignment, so you might have all of your approvals that, oh yeah, we can install a new camera, but who's doing that installation? So I think that don't forget the people, don't forget that stakeholder alignment. And the second piece, something we spoke about already, is those actionable alerts. So you need to set up a map, and it can be a changing map. I'm not saying that this has to be set in stone, but a map of when this happens, this response needs to happen. And by that, I mean, what if there's PPE missing in zone A? Do we want to send out a signal, or do we just want to send a piece of data to the dashboard so we know that? What happens when there's a person on a forklift interaction? Do we want to sound a siren? Quite often what we do is we put an alert inside a forklift to let the driver know that there is danger around them. So it's about understanding what processes work for your company and for your organization, and it's really mapping those out. We at Viso have done this multiple times, so we can certainly help you out in building those, but it absolutely needs to come from you, from your organization, because you know yourself best, you know your people best, and you know what will work for you.
That's really, really helpful. Thank you. So, what I'm getting from that is real clarity about the rules, the alerts, and what about what happens next in the process?
After that, the build becomes more predictable. The important step that sometimes goes missed is that post live adoption and tuning. This is where you either unlock that value or you lose it. So it's so important to work with your technological partner and for them to work so closely with your organization. It may require a lot of meetings and emails and exchanges, because what's really happening is you're making sure that the system is usable by people around you. It's important to have that feedback loop straight away. Otherwise, the system is simply not usable. So sometimes we may even have speakers on site as the alerts to actually say gloves are required or gloves are missing for this specific zone. So it's about informing the workers who are actually hearing these alerts or seeing these alerts what they are. I have worked with companies before who would say, oh, I need alerts going off constantly. Whenever anything's done, I need loud sounds. I need everyone to know that something's wrong. You can't do that because, okay, for you, it seems like productivity or it seems like actions are happening. But in reality, what it does is just create noise, it creates distraction, and it doesn't really add value to the floor anymore. You want to make sure that your alerts are understood by people who are receiving them and that they're actionable, and then not seeing them as something that prevents them from doing their day job, but actually helps them stay safe and helps them get their jobs done more effectively and faster.
That's the real bottom line, isn't it? That safety piece, sending people home safe at the end of their shifts. And people always ask about timelines. You referred to that. And I think I heard you mention just 6 weeks to production. Obviously, that depends on specifics, but that sounds really fast.
And as I mentioned before, it could really surprise some people. But with clear scope and a repeatable plan, that timeline can even shrink. So once you've done your initial use case of, 6 weeks, it actually with site two, with a new area, it becomes even quicker because you know the steps, you know the people who are involved. So it just goes a lot faster after that.
Fantastic. Alrighty, time to do one of my favorite bits of In Plain Sight. It's our reality check, or as I like to think of it, a quick fire myth bust. I'm going to throw some myths and some misconceptions at you, and I'd like you to tell me the reality and the practical so what for teams who are planning that rollout. Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, myth number one: computer vision is an AI project.
Yes and no. It's a operational rollout, but it does, of course, have AI inside it. AI matters, but success is coverage, governance, and response workflows. Is it just an AI project? Probably no. You have to put owners around it, divide decisions right, plan rollouts. It's really, truly an operational system with AI in it.
That's a great answer. Thank you. So, myth number two: if the model's accurate, we're basically done.
Well, model accuracy definitely plays a big part, but it is certainly not sufficient enough. So a strong model can still, may still not be connected correctly. A strong model may not have response sequences in time. What you're really looking at is a balance between a great model that fits and that works versus the response time, how it's connected. And again, going back to the point that I've been battering in this whole session is what response alerts it gives, what are the response sequences. So it's not just about a model. Model is a big part of it, but don't forget that model needs to work in your organization. What is it plugged into? Who's using it? Where's the data going?
Fabulous. I do love the way you keep bringing us back to some of those key essential points. Myth number 3, we need months of data science to get started. What do you think of that one?
No, I completely disagree. So, what you really need is real life world examples of what you're looking for. So, for example, if you're looking for something that occurs very rare, so for example, fall detection. And with some customers, we have done fall detection, and collecting that data in real scenarios is tough. So instead of waiting around for a full year to maybe have 5 falls, which is still not enough to build a model, what you end up doing is probably faking some falls, having some colleagues, doing some fall and tumbles. So really, it's about having that real life data that can help you build the model. In reality, with most use cases, so think your forklift person, that can be collected in less than a week. For something much more rare, you do need more examples, but it can often be faked and be good enough to take you into real production.
Got it. Sasha, you're doing great. On to myth number 4. I actually heard this from a colleague today.
Yeah.
If we have alerts, we automatically have ROI. What do you think?
No. Yes, alerts are great, but imagine going back to that use case that I mentioned before, where you have alerts going in everywhere. There's bells ringing, there's lights flashing. When that's happening, no one's getting any ROI. You certainly have all the bells and whistles, literally. But in reality, no one's been more productive, no one's been safer. You just have a lot of noise. So really, it's how effective the alerts are, who's responding to those alerts, and what is their purpose.
Brilliant. On to one of my favorites, myth number 5, and I do hear this all the time. Scaling is basically just adding more cameras. What's your view on that?
I would say yes and no. Scaling, I would say, could either be one of two things, and that's expanding the view of your use cases. So, by adding more cameras, more sites, going elsewhere with your deployment, or it can really be deepening those use cases. That you might start out with easily deployable use case, so something that gives you a lot of value, can be deployed quickly. But then what you might end up doing is going in with something deeper, more complex. So something that may take a little bit longer to implement. Think fall detection with all those fake falls that you need to record. So it can be the two things. So either expanding your field of vision or going deeper, if you like, by implementing more use cases.
Fabulous. We're almost at the end of this section. So, last myth, as you scale across multiple sites, it gets more difficult all the time.
No. If it gets more difficult, you've definitely gone wrong somewhere, and I feel terrible about saying that. I can imagine it being difficult, again, with governance, with stakeholders being involved, but in terms of technology, in terms of actual implementation, and if it's done right, if the implementation is done as a template, then of course it gets easier because you already know who gets involved, when they need to get involved, what are the standards, what are the alerts, what are the response times. Of course, these can be changed and tweaked. Not every site is the same. Not every, you may have warehouses and you may have manufacturing floors and you may have construction. There's so many variabilities, but really, if you're using that first deployment as a template to set you on that right path, it shouldn't be taking you longer. It should just become a much more quick and repeatable process.
Brilliant. That was amazing. Thank you. While I give you just a moment to take a breath, we're almost there now, but let's field another audience question our producers flagged. This old chestnut. How do we avoid the feeling that this is surveillance?
Yes, it's a huge part. We are, as people in the modern world, we're so aware that AI is almost taking over our lives. Many of people that I speak to are afraid they may take their jobs. But in terms of computer vision, what our aim is not to surveil the workers and to say, hey, Jeremy, why did you turn up 2 minutes late? Why are you not wearing your gloves? It's all about keeping your people safe and making sure everyone gets home in one piece on time to their loved ones. And as a benefit, maybe even improve the operational efficiency of the organization, making you more profitable, more efficient, allowing you to hire more people and get more of your services or goods out there. So it's about getting involved with your workers earlier rather than later, not putting them in front of a fact saying, this is a solution, you're going to get onto it. You have a bunch of computer cameras looking at you. It's about building that trust, working with them, helping them understand that this is not about pointing fingers. This is about keeping you safe, alerting you of alerts that you haven't maybe are not in your peripheral. Think about multiple forklifts coming together. It's about alerting you of a situation that maybe you've done so often you forgot, i.e., some important piece of PPE in a dangerous setting. So it's really just about keeping your workplace safe and allowing your colleagues to get home safe.
Fabulous answer as ever, bringing us back to that key point, the path to zero harm. That's absolutely essential for health and safety. Let's move on and dig just a little deeper into what works in practice and the actual field guide. You said earlier implementation becomes easy once that baseline's right. Can we do some specifics? What does easy mean for you?
So, really, what matters is breaking down your plan into a number of steps. So, when I introduce our platform, I say that it helps you build end to end computer vision. And what that means to me is you start with that model. Some people call it the brain. So you want to train AI to recognize the items within your organization. So be it use case of forklift and a person, you want to train the AI to recognize what a forklift looks like, what a person looks like. Great. That's the model. Are we done? No. Next piece is the logic. So you have possibly hundreds of cameras on your site. So which cameras are specifically that need to be looking at forklifts and people? It's not going to be all your cameras, but it might be a big majority. So making sure that the right cameras are looking at the right model, or rather the right model responds to the right cameras. And then, okay, so the model recognizes you're a human, that's a forklift. That what you're adding next is that piece of logic. How close do those two have to be together to send out an alert? Next piece is what kind of alert gets sent out. So we're going back to actionable insights or actionable signals and alerts, right? And then what if a situation gets even more dangerous? What happens then? Is there another alert that gets built on top of that? So that's the logic piece. So not just the model, but you're building out that full flow of where you're starting at cameras, even other sensors. Then you're going into which model you're using, which logic, what the response is. And last two pieces is, of course, all of your technology. So we've already spoken about cameras. You also have edge devices with edge processing. I can do a full podcast on that. So making sure all of your video gets processed really quickly so you can get that really quick response time. For that, we recommend having a computer edge device on site. So making sure that all of those connected. And lastly, your operational piece. So that data, where it gets collected, who uses it, what story does it tell, etc.
Fantastic. Definitely sign me up for that podcast. I'm in. Going back into the model a little bit more, just love to get a bit more detail. What's the most important aspect when you think about the model?
I think when it comes to the model, the most important parts are, of course, you need to have examples of what it is that you're looking for. So there are vendors out there who will use, you know, their customers' data, they will build a model, and then they'll go ahead and sell that model onto other customers. First of all, I would say that's always a big red flag for me, and that's for multiple reasons. Because when you're training a model on your data, you're literally showing them examples of your operations, potentially of your accidents, of your people. And yes, you can guarantee that those examples will never get out. But how strong can those guarantees be? So if somebody is selling the model that used your data to train on it, I would always flag up, red flag. You really need to do your due diligence. I wouldn't want to sell Viso's secrets to our competitors, and I don't know if anyone in the manufacturing industry would truly do that either. So that's one piece. And second piece, when you train a model on your own data, it's going to be accurate. It's going to be more lightweight. So if you imagine training a model that works for every single situation in the world, that's going to be a very intelligent model, but it's going to be incredibly heavy, and it will have a lot of useless data on it that you don't need yourself. So training it on your specific use cases really gives you that best of both worlds. You both have the security, the efficiency, the reliability. So best of all three worlds, really.
Amazing. That's really helped me understand the model deeper at a foundational level. Turning to logic, why is logic the real product once you've got that model delivered?
So I think I've already gone into this. So I'll try. I know it's hard for me. I'm really passionate. I really love to dive into the details. So I'll try my best to stay surface level.
Go for it.
I've already spoken about this in terms of you have a model and it truly matters so much. So, for example, I'll try to use something different that I haven't brought up yet. Um, Maybe something to do with quality. Let's say you're producing biscuits and you want your biscuits to be of a certain size, cookies for the American audiences. So you can have a model that measures them perfectly down to the millimeter. But truly, when it comes to logic, you need to know what to do with this information. If your model can, down to the hundredth of millimeter, measure your cookie or your biscuit, you know, what use is that? We often have data scientists coming into this field and working with our clients and saying, well, that model's not good enough. It's only 70% certain that that cookie is the right shape and size. Okay, but 70% certainty of what a human thinks, I'm 70% certain that's a mug, then we both would look like, Sashi, there's either something wrong with you or that's maybe not a mug, right? For a computer vision model to look at that mug and say I'm 70% certain it's a mug, in my eyes, that's 95% certainty, right? It's just different kind of thresholds. But really, going back to the cookie, what are your thresholds within your organization? Do you really need to measure your cookie or to know there's 100% the forklift or it's 100% the person down to the hundredth of a millimeter? What you need to know is what to do with this item when it's not right. What to do if this forklift doesn't look like a forklift, but maybe it looks more like a cube. What do you need to do that? And that's where the logic piece comes in. It really helps you move from model, which is important, to what are you going to do with that, right? So that's where the response is. If I have a piece of paper and I have a pencil, that's great. But it's about me putting that pencil to the paper and writing stuff down. That's what the logic does. It puts that pencil to the paper and writes. Model just says, here's a piece of paper, here's a pencil. So it gives you the tools, but it doesn't give you the solution.
It is so great to hear how passionate you are about this subject. I mean, your experience really does shine through. Moving on to that third layer, the operational layer. So things like dashboards and reporting, how does that fit?
I think you've spoken before about alerts going off, that's ROI, right? And it isn't. So, and that's where dashboarding comes in. When you think about computer vision, I think I think of bounding boxes, so little boxes around people, around forklifts, around biscuits, cookies. But in reality, what it is the data that it gives you. It's nice to have pretty little labels on your CCTV, but in reality, it's the information that it gives you. So understanding, is there a consistent pattern of the near misses or of incidents on a specific site? Does one site have more incidents than the other? And don't forget, near misses tend to be invisible. So maybe there's one site that has more incidents, but a completely other site just gets luckier and gets away with it, but has a significantly higher near misses in comparison. It flags up those issues that maybe you haven't seen before. It gives that, it sounds so nerdy, but it truly puts the power in your hands as the leader, as a supervisor. Data is king, and having it and understanding where the problems lie, where they're coming from, is really what will drive the safety and the change within the organization. If there's always an issue in this one little area of your warehouse, say, then it's not the issue with your employees or them not doing things right. It's the issue with that area. And it's on you as a leader to recognize it and change it.
That is fantastic. Love that. Quick practical add on here, if I may. If someone in our audience is listening and thinking, I need a really structured way to define a use case and then to justify it, what should they do?
So, a little shameless plug here. At Riso AI on our resources page, we actually have the use case builder and the ROI calculator. Yes, we have a slide with it. So, the use case builder helps you identify your priority use cases in seconds, where you should start and what's the easiest kind of use case that gives you the most value that you should start on. Then the ROI calculator helps you quantify impact with metrics that matter internally. You plug in your inputs like incidents and injury data, and based on the Heinrich pyramid, it gives you a structured estimate on how you can take this into operational review or to your health and safety committee. So the point here is the speed and the alignment. These kind of tools and others we bring to the table help teams agree on scope, value, before you even touch hardware or software. It's quick, intuitive, and as you'd expect, repeatable, and really helps that deployment gain momentum.
Caught me just having a quick sip.
Sorry, I can definitely ad lib a little bit more. Let me tell you more about our calculator.
That's brilliant. Thank you for the plug. Do check out the Health and Safety Toolkit. Boiling it down a little bit, if somebody wants to create a simple checklist to take away from them, just boiling it all down, what would that be?
So I think I'd summarize it into a couple of things. So governance, make sure that you have the correct stakeholders aligned who know what they're doing and when they're going to be needed for it, what they're responsible for. I would also say you really should go with that platform flexibility, because without the flexibility, you won't have a robust implementation. God, I love that word. So you really need to be able to change things without, completely ripping out the deployment and sticking a new one in. So that flexibility layer allows you to move with the world. Of course, your operational layer. So make sure that both your alerts, that you know the sequence of your alerts, who's responsible for them, but also what data you require, what story it tells, who's it benefiting, and really hopefully showing the ROI. And make sure to use that use case builder and ROI calculator to help you get started with your projects and really hit the ground running. Um, but yeah, don't forget that if done right with those first implementation, scaling should just be um, just a much more repeatable, predictable, and easier process.
Fabulous. Well, sadly, Sasha, we're nearly out of time. So we're just going to go to one last question.
If you can hear me speak even more, go for it.
What's the best way to make Site 2 faster than Site 1 in terms of deployment?
Can I just say, we keep going back to it being faster. Faster isn't always better, but it's definitely what I keep mentioning. Have the right stakeholders aligned, make sure that everyone understands what needs to get done when, make sure they're bought in, and of course, use your first use case as the template. That's where you'll find this stakeholder alignment, response alerts, people will get bought in. So, after the first one, it should be, I keep saying it, just much more repeatable process. So just make sure you write it all down as you go along. Any mistakes you make or any changes that you make in your plan, make sure that they're down on paper.
Methodical and organized as ever. We are definitely in the home straight now. Let's take it all the way to the finish line. Why does the platform matter when reality can get messy?
I keep coming back to this, and I'm worried I'm almost parroting on top of my words, but it's what I've mentioned before. In this world, you are either flexible or you're irrelevant, right? Things are changing so fast, and quite excitedly for me, being a major nerd, you know, AI is changing fast. It's moving so quickly. And where we are today, which is actually a really exciting place in terms of, AI vision breakthroughs that we are having. So check out our VGI white paper, another plug for you. But we actually are getting, well, we are seeing large vision models. So you've heard of your large language models. We now have large vision models. So I'm going back into a little black hole here, but essentially imagine showing anything to this model and it says, yeah, okay, not only do I identify all the objects on the screen, but I can also tell what actions happened, what the sentiment was, and what might happen next and how to prevent it happening in the future. So it's essentially having, large language model write your homework for you, but this is seeing something visually. So imagine currently you're using object detection, which is the normal thing to use because it is truly efficient and it works in 90% of use cases. But this is going from object detection to, something that can just look at a camera and tell you, oh yeah, by the way, did you notice apart from the 3 risks you just mentioned, there's actually 5 more. And this is how you can fix them. And this is how you can make sure they don't arise again. So it's a truly fascinating place. With a platform, going back to your question, it means that when these exciting changes happen, without ripping out the whole implementation, ripping out all of the technology, you can um, you can just swap pieces out, right? You're looking for modular deployment, really, and that also comes in handy when you're building a new site, when you're changing your hardware technology, when you're adding more sensors, when you're changing your alert sequences, when you're changing your data story. Every single piece needs to have that flexibility to really change with your organization. You're not standing still, technology is not standing still. So you need to make sure you're partnered with a solution that doesn't stand still either.
Fantastic. So 2 things. Firstly, flexibility key. Secondly, I don't think you're a nerd. I think you've got geek chic. But let's move on from that. Let's close out.
Not sure
It,
everyone would agree.
Well, we'll move on. I'll
Yeah,
stop the
I mean,
schmoozing.
yeah.
If someone remembers only one thing from today, and hopefully not that last bit, what is it? Take us home.
Scaling is repeatability. I can still speak English. Um, and what that means is take the lessons you've learned from your first deployment and carry them into the future. I would definitely select a partner who, now sound like a relationship guru. I was going to say who takes your concerns seriously. That's a different podcast, Jeremy, that we can do later. Sorry. Um, what I mean is data privacy. Go with a partner who takes those concerns seriously, a partner who can reassure your staff that this is not surveillance, that this is truly a tool to keep you safe and to help you out. Select a partner that can flex and move with you and the world. But yeah, if we're just talking about scaling, flexibility, right partnership, and that repeatability process all up there for me.
Amazing. What a strong, strong place to end. Thank you so much, Sasha. That's absolutely brilliant. So, thanks for tuning in. For everyone listening, your next step is relatively simple. Map your stakeholders, write the minimum governance you can live by, pick a first use case that proves value quickly, and becomes your rollout template for what comes next. We really hope that you enjoyed today's session. I hope you'll agree, Sasha was fantastic. We will follow up with any of the unanswered questions. I can see a lot more have come in, and with some of the resources we outlined today. In the meanwhile, stay safe. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next In Plain Sight, and thanks for being here.